Hey, everybody. All right. The list of things I know about my father is short. He's 5 foot 7 inches, Italian American, blood type A positive. He runs and lifts weights. He doesn't smoke or drink. He's described by Pacific Women's Health Services as easy to talk to, warm, and handsome. I bet they say that about all their sperm donors. All his info was given to my two mothers on a single sheet of paper titled Donor 118. And at the bottom of the page it said, willing to be known when the child turns 18. That was the arrangement. After coming of age, I could meet him. Until then, he was an anonymous silhouette on my family tree, which was proving difficult on this day in the third grade at Montgomery Elementary because we were writing essays about our fathers. The prompt was, why is your dad important to you? I sat there, staring at the blank sheet of paper, thinking over the few basic facts I knew about my dad, and trying to construct an image of the man who could be their logical sum. Apart from what was listed on his donor profile, the only thing I knew about him for sure was that at some point he'd masturbated. And I couldn't put that in an essay. Finally, after 20 minutes of deliberation, I just wrote 2 words, not applicable, and turned my paper over. A kid sitting next to me asked, what did you write? I didn't have to write anything, I explained. I don't have a dad. I have 2 moms. How do you have 2 moms? Well, because they're gay. Everyone around me started to giggle like I just told them a joke with a bad word in it. One kid asked, what's gay? Shit. And another answered, that's what Michael Jackson is. That's when I realized I was in an all too familiar kind of trouble. The trouble you got into for talking about gay people in small town Texas in the 90s. In retrospect, I call it opening up Pandora's closet. My mom's had moved us to Texas from San Francisco, and I was still figuring out that the word gay meant something different here. To the people of Montgomery, gays and lesbians were like dragons. They didn't exist. But even if they were to exist, you wouldn't want one in your town. Just saying the word gay in school was a punishable offense, so when my teacher heard me trying to explain to a group of laughing children the difference between gays and pedophiles, she said, Brenton, principal's office, now! Mrs. Borden, the principal, was an older woman who had lived in Montgomery her entire life. When I told her what had happened, she eyed me with the same weary look Tommy Lee Jones uses in No Country for Old Men. It was that look that said, kid, I am too old, and your problems are too new. After I'd finished, she sighed and spoke in a southern drawl. I'll be honest, Brendan. I don't think there's an easy fix for this one. She started going through pamphlets on her desk, I guess looking for the one that suited my situation, but apparently Montgomery ISD didn't make a so you just outed your parents pamphlet back then. After a few moments, she shrugged and said, if you want my advice, Brendan, don't tell anyone about your moms. The other kids will just keep making fun of you. There's nothing I can do to fix that. The best thing you can do is to keep this a secret. It was depressing, but practical advice. I didn't tell anyone about my parents. I didn't be teased if I didn't tell anyone about my parents, so not fully realizing what I was doing, I closed the closet on my mom's. There was just one issue left. What to do when people asked about my father, and now the answer seemed obvious. Lie my ass off. From then on, when other kids asked about my dad, I alternately told them he was a businessman living in Japan, a Hollywood stunt double, and a skyer fighter. That's a profession I made up. It's someone who fights fires in the sky. But my favorite lie about my father was one I told to a kid named Dustin. Dustin was one of my best friends at school, a really nice kid. And if there was anyone in Montgomery who could have handled the truth about my parents, I think it would have been him. Which is why, in a moment of candor, I actually started to tell him one day. I told him I wasn't allowed to meet my father, but before I could get further into the explanation, he asked, "Why not? Is your dad in jail?" "Oh my God, Dustin," I said. "How did you know?" "Yes, he is in jail. He's been in jail my entire life." For some reason, the idea of my father being incarcerated resonated with me so much more than all the other occupations I'd assigned him. I'd immediately connected with the lie and started learning as much as I could about crime and prison to concoct a good backstory. Since my real father was Italian, I decided my fictional father should be in the mafia. I told Dustin he was running a smuggling racket in prison, selling contraband to the other inmates. "Isn't that illegal?" Dustin asked. "It's how you survive, Dustin." So I got so invested in the lie, I actually told other kids different lies in front of Dustin. Someone would ask why my father wasn't going to some after-school event, and I'd say, "Oh, he's a sea captain, and he's off in the Bermuda Triangle." And then when that person was gone, I'd lean over to Dustin and say, "You just have to understand. I mean, I can't tell everybody the truth. Some people just wouldn't get it, you know?" "Sure, man." He'd nod sympathetically. I really loved this fiction, but over time it got too complex. I made so many details to my prison dad's mythology that I couldn't keep them all straight in my head anymore. I built him up into an intricate amalgam of Al Capone and Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption, who somehow had a rap sheet going all the way back to Prohibition. I realized that if I kept going, I'd eventually get caught into my own web of bullshit. It was a fun lie while it lasted, but it needed to end. So one day, when Dustin asked me how my father was doing, I said, "Actually, Dustin, my dad's dead." "What?" Yeah, he got stabbed in the yard. Shanked is what they call it. It was some kind of gang thing. I don't know the whole story. Anyway, I'm pretty broken up about it, so if we could go ahead and never talk about this again, that'd be great. Sure, dude. Well, whatever you want, Dustin said, and he went back to his math work, visibly mortified. I thought that'd be the end of it. I didn't consider the death of a friend's father is kind of a huge emotional burden to lay on a 9-year-old, and that Dustin was bound to tell an adult at some point. I should have known better than anyone that being 9 and keeping secrets isn't easy. 2 weeks later at a PTA meeting, Dustin's mom went up to my mom and said, "I am so sorry for your loss. How's Brendan doing now that his father's been murdered?" My mom was understandably surprised to hear the news. When she got home, she told me what had happened, and I thought I was in serious trouble. But she didn't punish me. I guess, like my principal, she didn't have a better idea for what I should be telling the other kids. Instead, she just said, "Oh, next time you come up with a story like that, let me know about it so I can be ready for the PTA." Looking back on all this, I've often wondered why, of all the lies I told about my dad, was my favorite one the one where he was incarcerated. I guess I was pretty melodramatic even back then. I was also reading Tom Sawyer, and I'm sure Huck Finn's reprobate father influenced me. But I think the reason I loved this lie is because it was the closest to the truth. Not in substance, but in effect. The idea of having a parent in jail, like the truth, was information that not everyone would understand. Information I shouldn't have had to be ashamed of, but that still carried with it an obvious stigma. In the years to come, I started telling the real story of my parents in gradual increments. I told a few close friends about my moms in junior high, and then a few more in high school. By the time I got to college, I was completely open about it. And by then, it was cool and interesting to have 2 moms. But getting to that point was a process. It was a slow transition to the truth that started with a lie. My fictional, criminal, convict dad helped me get there. And I'll always be grateful to him for that. Thank you very much.